Okay, tomorrow is going to be exactly 40 years ago. Well, today, 14th of February, that I saw Star Wars: A New Hope. And, well, 40 years ago. So I'd have seen it on my birthday in 1978. And we got it a lot later than the USA. So 1978, most people in the UK would have seen it because it only opened on the 27th of December 1977 in the UK. So from what I remember, I didn't want to see it. I remember my uncle, who now lives in Australia, said, "Oh, it's got dinosaurs in it." So it was decided that I would go and see Star Wars, even though I wasn't very keen on seeing it. And so off I went, and so I was just turned 8 on that day. And looking back 40 years ago, it's amazing what you remember or what you can remember from way back then. And I mean, I think maybe the first times I became aware of Star Wars was like maybe on a show called Screen Test, which was aimed at kids. It was like a BBC program for children, and I think that the first ever images I remember seeing from Star Wars would have been of the X-wings approaching the Death Star, and that just looked amazing to me. Maybe the orange flight suits connected with the the um, costumes that they wore in Space 1999. So obviously I wanted to see it, but obviously when my uncle talked about it, I didn't realise he was that was what he was talking about. And so um, it was a great film. Maybe I'd had got the comic, the number second issue of the UK Star Wars Weekly as well, just before. But I didn't know what I was going to expect, and we hadn't seen nothing like this before. It's just like such an amazing movie, and uh, I've loved it ever since. And A New Hope is still my favourite Star Wars movie, though many would now say that The Last Jedi is. Only joking, but and yeah, it's amazing what you remember from 40 odd years ago. Um, I remember we went on the bus going there. I was with my sister, my mum, uh, my best friend called Jeff, another mate from primary school called Nathan. I remember we had Golden Wonder sausage and tomato flavoured crisps. So, I mean, that's amazing that I remember that so vividly 40 years ago. And, just that the film was just so amazing. The stormtroopers just looked so cool. Darth Vader, the heroes. It's just such a fun film, and it took us into a galaxy far, far away. Unlike what Disney wants Star Wars to be now, it wants its Star Wars to be laced with 21st century political issues, and that doesn't make the film magical anymore. So that's one thing. But this is such a good film, and I was driving home on Saturday night, getting a lift to Bayswater, I think, and the guy that was driving me, I haven't seen him for about a year and a half, and then he was talking about because he'd just seen The Last Jedi, and he was not understanding the hate it was getting. And I said, well, it's quite, but and then we moved on. I said, look, on Wednesday it's going to be exactly 40 years since I saw Star Wars, and he said it'll be exactly the same for him as well, because he saw it on Valentine's Day in 1978 as well. So I thought that was quite a coincidence. Also, it'd be for my sister as well, because she was quite a bit of a Star Wars fan, not as much as me, but she was back then. And then obviously what sealed the deal in a way was not long after the Star Wars figures started to appear, which were quite, significant and quite, because we didn't have any like electronic stuff really. So to reenact Star Wars, you had to use your imagination. You had to use whatever paper stuff was available. So we had the comics, the British version. We had the novel, and anything else that was coming out then. Um, and then the toys finally came out, and you know they're my favorite thing from Star Wars, the action figures. I mean, I love the films, but for me, the toys are just, you know, they're what I played with. They're what I use my imagination to take these characters onto further adventures, you know. So that's why these figures mean so much for my generation, really. And you know, so Star Wars is just amazing. That 40 years, and we're still getting more Star Wars movies. We've got a new Han Solo movie coming. I don't know what to make of it. It looks okay. I mean, wait and see. Take each thing as it comes. I mean, Rogue One was pretty decent last year. I mean, Force Awakens is pretty. Even though the Force Awakens pretty much emulates the paces and pulses of this movie, but and then you got this scene here where we'll see. This is the original version. So Han will shoot first, which is what Han should be. I mean, we never had problems with this as kids, that Han would shoot first. It didn't make us into violent psychopaths or anything like that. It's just a done thing. It's very Wild West, you know. Over my dead body. So, 40 years, a long, long time. And that's why my generation is so very much attached to these movies, is that we've basically loved these films since we were, little toddlers. And I mean, I just turned 8, but and these films have such a meaning to us that we don't like to see them mishandled by corporations who aren't invested in the franchise and just think they can shovel any old drivel into a script and we will swallow it. Obviously, we won't. And um, I mean, I went to Toys R Us today, and there was just so much Star Wars Last Jedi stuff just hanging on the shelf, all at mostly at full price. I mean, the shop was pretty empty. No one was buying anything, and you really even pretty demotivated to buy the new stuff because you're not invested in the heroes like Kylo Ren. I mean, he's the villain now, or Rey or Finn. They don't have the same heart as these characters like Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Obi-Wan Kenobi. These characters you can relate to. They're down to earth, and they have faults, and they're fallible. Whereas a lot of the new characters, especially Rey, are virtually perfect. They don't meet failure. They're good at everything right away. Whereas here, Luke is just a novice. He hasn't got a clue. He's naive. And we see him grow in The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So that's why these films mean a lot. And when it comes to Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back, most people will say Empire Strikes Back is their favourite, but for me, A New Hope is, because this is the one that I think is still my favourite and will always be my favourite, because it's just, George Lucas said that with this film that he only felt that it was 60% of what he wanted, but I think maybe because it's in his mind imperfect, it is so good. necessity is the mother of invention, and you know, this film, it was just like, because it was the first one, and it was so, we'd never see anything like this. I mean, maybe the closest thing we'd got to this in the UK was Space 1999, maybe the old Star Trek as well. uh, I can't think of any other series that, or sci-fi show. I mean, this is sci-fi, but it's also a bit of the old Wild West swashbuckling adventure. That's why it's so good. And obviously, I think it's Throne of Blood. Anyway, so I could just ramble on for ages about this. Hopefully, by the time this come up, it will be the 14th of Feb 2018, and that will be 40 years ago to the day that I saw A New Hope. I'll watch this tomorrow, the movie, just to, celebrate the fact that I've seen it was 40 years ago today. But anyway, have a nice Valentine's Day, and peace, man. Cheers, bye.